Hello Create Schools. Today I'm going to take a look at our last video in Chapter 4. We're going to take a look at the Berlin Blockade, which was done in 1948. So go ahead and get a piece of paper out and a pencil and write that down. Okay, so first to remember that Germany was split. We have the British sector, the American sector, and the French sector, and the Soviet sector. And also Berlin was split. So here is Berlin, deep within the eastern Germany. We've got the French sector, we've got the British sector, the American sector, and the Soviet sector. So this sector here was communist, and these three sectors over here were capitalist. Okay, so you need to keep that in mind. Go ahead and write that Germany is split. Maybe go ahead and do a quick sketch of this map so you know where it is. And here is Berlin. Do a quick sketch of it as well, labeling it, which part, so that way you can keep a good idea. It doesn't actually matter as much which part here, so whether it's French, American, or British, but do go ahead and make the whole big sector, and make sure you know that Berlin is snugly within Eastern Germany, within the communist part. Okay, go ahead and pause this video, write that down, and draw that little picture. Okay, so in 1946, the Cold War was, the term itself was started. So the question is, what is meant by a Cold War? Well, a Cold War is opposite of a hot war. Okay, now if you think about it, when you shoot a gun, that gun is hot. That is a hot war. So a hot war is shot with guns. A Cold War, on the other hand, is fought with ideas and fought with ideologies and beliefs. So it's fought with your brain. So within a Cold War, sometimes it does turn hot, and we will be looking in the next two chapters about the hot parts of the Cold War. Okay, also, when you're talking about a lot of different ideologies, the way you get people upset and the way you get people on your side is through propaganda. And so I've thrown up some propaganda posters here for you. On the far left, those left two are Soviet propaganda posters. Unfortunately, I couldn't find any good ones that said what they're actually meaning, so I hope someone reading this in Russian doesn't read it and say, oh my. But anyway, so the far left, it just shows how the workers are strong and how they're saying no to big bucks and things like that, how they're not going to take that they're working together as a group of people, and they're not going to fight for they're going to fight for communism, and is going to get rid of those capitalist ideals. The second one, the middle one from communism, this is showing Stalin here, and a lot of times they show Stalin with children and how he's a lovely, wonderful man and how everyone should care about them, and the little baby is all happy, and this gives you the feeling that communism is great, communism is wonderful. You know, this little kid right here with flowers and a flag. Everything looks great here. So here we've got our stern guy. Here we have our happy guy, and they're very strong and powerful and muscular people. And so here we've got some American propaganda posters. Communism is America's mortal enemy. So this here is showing communism stabbing the United States, bringing it back, or making it ruined. And this is Stop Communism, and this says Juan right here. And so here it's everyone's job to stop communism, and it's showing how he needs to fight against communism. There was a lot of also anti-communism movies going on in America, even though a lot of Hollywood was actually pro-communist. But there was a lot of communism movies trying to, so everyone can see it. And so the American sentiment is communism is bad, we have to stop it, we have to stop it. Russians' sentiment is communism is wonderful, it makes us strong, it makes us happy, it makes us healthy. So those are the two huge ideologies that they are playing with. So go ahead and stop this video, take a pause, and write this down, and then we'll go on to the next slide. Okay, so a little bit of background of why we had this problem. So, or why the Berlin Wall happened. Sorry, Berlin blockades happened. In 1946, Britain, France, and America combined their zones together. Okay, and they called it Trizonia. Okay, and they named it West Germany in 1949 and called it the Federal Republic of Germany. Okay, they wanted to rebuild all the industries and work together so all the people could feed and take care of themselves. And they also introduced a new money system called the Deutsche Mark. Okay, they did that in 1948. So I picked this cartoon here because I thought it was really apt. We've got the 4 backyards. Okay, and we've got the British and the American zones breaking a hole down here, and so they joined first, and that was called Bizonia. So if you ever see Bizonia, it's just the beginning, and then later they will cut the hole down here, and they call this Trizonia. And so Russia's got a hammer too that he could also do it, but he's sitting here looking off, saying, "I'm not paying attention to you." And as you can see, this is actually written in German, but it was in the Daily Heralds, which is a English one, and it says, 2 Vereins are good, but 4 would be much better. So, of course, they were saying, let's all join and work together. That's what this is saying. And then Russia's like, no, I don't want to work with you guys. Okay, so pause here, go ahead and copy these notes down. So what happens actually is then after Trizonia was formed and the Deutsche Mark was made, the Stalin was very upset, and he said, okay, we're going to stop everything, and nothing is going to come in or out by road or train or rail, and everything will be stopped. And the people in Berlin are in West Berlin are either going to starve, or they're going to give up and join East Berlin, or the Allies will give West Berlin to the East Germans and no longer be a sore capitalist spot in the middle of all of this communist areas. So the blockade began on the 21st of June in 1948. West Berlin had around 2.25 million people who only had 6 weeks worth of food. So Truman really thought about what is he going to do. So basically, I told you the 2 plans that Stalin thought he could do: either starve the people and basically he gets to take over West Berlin, or have them give up West Berlin, save the people, and then the people will willingly go to East Germany, East Berlin. But Truman had another idea. He decided that he was going to airlift everything in and see what would happen. And so he flew planes in. Oh, that's the next one. That's right here with the Berlin airlift. So I've got ahead of myself. I'm sorry about that. So Truman realized that he had to keep Berlin free and part of the West because it's a symbol of the strength of the capitalism. The other thing Stalin also wanted, I've missed this point right here, is that if they were to do anything, if they were to start fighting, this would be seen as an act of war, and actually would look really bad for the capitalists and really good for the communists when they look back in history and say, oh yeah, the Allies fought against Stalin again. So that was important not to start an act of war. And so Stalin was afraid of the atomic bomb, though. So I'll tell you about the Berlin airlift in just 1 second. So go ahead and pause this and write all of your blockade notes down. Okay, so finally we've got our Berlin airlift. And so at first, the Allies were really worried that Stalin would shoot down the planes, because they basically decided that they were going to send planes in because the skies were free, and they would drop food and clothing down to the people. And if you've ever heard about Rosinenbomben, that is what I am talking about. So the political cartoon shows right here, everything's closed, the roads closed, the rails closed, and it says, "No go, Joe," and Joe is Stalin. And so that says demand for air control, and so they're trying to stop the airplanes with this net, so it's kind of a joke here. And so they are flying these planes in and dropping them. They did that for 10 months long, and they had sent 3 planes per minute. And the clothes brought food, clothing, building materials, etc. And finally, in May 1949, Stalin gave up because it was clear that it was not helping. So here's another little cartoon, Berlin Barometer. And so this is showing how it says go. It's a super something, I don't know what it is, but it refers to the superpowers. And so it showed, this is Stalin's face right here. Here we've got Uncle Sam. We've talked about Uncle Sam before. He is the symbol for America always. And it says go, like I say, super somebody's. And so showing that there's change going on. So go ahead and pause here and take the notes. And I'll move on to the next slide. Okay, because in history we never just look at what's going on, we always look at what happened because what went on. We need to look at the consequences of the Berlin blockade. Because of the Berlin blockade, what happened? So write this down, pause here if you need to, and then we'll go on to the next video. Next slide. So the NATO was formed, and the NATO is the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. And as I really quickly see that, I see that I actually haven't written that down. So go ahead and listen really quick, write this down. NATO is formed. If you need to pause it just for a second to write that, and then I will tell you again what NATO means so you can write that down as well. So NATO is the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Go ahead and spell those words the best you can, and you can get the spelling later. I'll repeat that one more time. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO. You also heard NATO. It's pronounced both ways depending on what language you speak. So there was a lot of tension between the U.S. and the Soviet Union because of the Berlin blockade, and they were really worried that it could become a full-scale war. Excuse me. So the Allies decided they need to establish a formal agreement to work together to keep other people from, threatening them. So in response, they established the NATO, which is an alliance against the Soviet Union. It was formed in April 1949, and finally later, West Germany joined in 1955. Okay, so I'm going to pause this last sentence right here. So I want you to come over here and look at this video. So here we've got the NATO people sitting together. Looks like they're playing cards. I can't quite read what this says. And so here we've got Stalin sitting over here by himself. And it says, "Your play, Joe." And it's the Western leaders waiting to see how Stalin would react to the formation of NATO. So actually, Stalin at 1949 didn't react at all. He just let it happen. He wasn't worried. But then in 1955, when West Germany did join, that's when Stalin became worried and started the Warsaw Pact. And Warsaw Pact is a slide coming up, so we'll get to that in a second. So go ahead and pause here, write these notes down, and we'll move on to the next slide. Okay, so just to give you a really quick rundown, hopefully you already know about this, but Germany during the Cold War. So in May 1949, Trizonia was formed, called the Federal Republic of Germany. And in October 1949, the Communist Zone named himself the German Democratic Republic, so the DDR. And Berlin was a symbol, had a lot of politics. You guys know about the Berlin Wall. Please do not mix up the Berlin Wall and the Berlin Blockade. They are two totally different things. What I've just talked about previously in this video is the Berlin Blockade. There was no actual wall. There were just people stopping saying, no, you can't come in here. Okay? So let's move on to the next slide after you pause here and take these notes down. Okay, our last slide is the Warsaw Pact. And basically it is the main communist groups they joined. So there are Poland, East Germany, Czechoslovakia, Romania, and Hungary. And they promised that they would attack other people, or if they would defend each other if they were attacked. And they promised also not to interfere with what is going on inside in each country. So they would allow each country to run their countries as they want. Now, I'd like to point out here that Yugoslavia is not part of the communist of the Warsaw Pact. If you remember back from the video, I guess it was 2 videos ago about Eastern Europe, I said I'd tell you a little bit more about Yugoslavia. And so Yugoslavia decided they wanted to take the Marshall Aid, and when they took the Marshall Aid, they were not allowed to be part of the communist group. And so Tito, although they were communist, they were not part of the Warsaw Pact, and they were actually very friendly with the United States. So there's your little story of what's going on there. You don't have to have that memorized, but it is something good to know. Okay, if you have any questions, let me know. Pause the video here or stop the video and so you can get these rest of these notes, and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.